Okay, so today is day 5 of 9 days of Dhamma, 25 years of Abhayagiri, honoring our elders. And of course there's been various Dhamma reflections, Q&A on various themes of practice and life, and the meditations that we've been doing together. So it's been I think it's quite a rich experience, and quite a lovely occasion. Great way to mark this kind of milestone of Abhayagiri. One of the things I thought I would talk about today is I think probably listening to Ajahn Amaro and then reflecting back on of course our collaboration and whatnot, but also, I think thinking about the kind of the ethos or the purpose of Abhayagiri, and because I remember when he and I were, we hadn't yet moved here, and sitting down and talking about, there was a kind of a tentative agreement to maybe collaborate, but I think for both of us we wanted to feel each other out, to figure out whether we had a similar vision or not, and obviously we did, because it happened. But reflecting on the what both he and I felt were important kind of principles and focuses to bring into the establishing of this new monastery in Northern California, and to the recognition that there were all sorts of Buddhist groups, meditation centers, spiritual centers of all sorts, and what wasn't very apparent was a traditional monastery that people could, and particularly sort of Americans could come and train at, and be able to establish a place for monastic training, and also just we were quite clear from the beginning that we would need to, because things were going to be complicated enough, and to be able to try to just keep things fairly simple, so that providing a place where both men and women could come and practice, but really to try to support, say, nuns training somewhere else, and and which we've tried to do as best we can, but to be able to focus on the sort of male monastic training in this place, and because it's something that is so new and different to the society. Like America is kind of, and still is, fundamentally a Protestant culture, and kind of Protestant Christian culture, and it's finally sort of kicking and screaming into the 21st century as something a bit more. But even that is I say, like 25 years ago, was still quite new. And most people didn't have much sense of monastic training, and if they were familiar with monastic training, they tended to think in terms of Catholicism, which is quite separate from the society, and quite separate, quite independent, quite autonomous, which is kind of fundamentally the direct opposite to what Theravada monastic practice is, and certainly Thai Theravada practice, where the monasteries are close to the villages. I mean, this is from just the way that the Buddha established the training. There is a direct relationship of dependence on the lay community, and that has kept the monasteries and the society around it kind of in communication and in relationship to each other, so that so wanting to bring that example of our tradition, because certainly I think that was one of the most inspiring things for me, going to my very first visit to Ajahn Chah's monastery, Wat Pah Pong, as a newly ordained monk. I mean, there was many impressions, but of course the first one was just how peaceful it was, and that sense of, oh, this is what I've been looking for all my life, you know, and that, something peaceful, an environment that is really holds those who enter into it in a very peaceful, solid kind of, but kind of, you know, there's a kind of warmth and openness there as well, and then, of course, the example of Ajahn Chah and the community at Wat Pah Pong, I mean, just as already of a reasonable size when I first went in the early 70s, and there's this sense of focus and commitment. Focus, commitment, integrity, that the monks and nuns at Wat Pah Pong really exemplified. So that was very inspiring to me. But also, and maybe even more so, was the involvement of the lay community. Just how every single day there were lay people coming to the monastery. Then once a week, the lay people would come on the lunar observance days, and they would chant and meditate and listen to Dhamma, and then they do that. They come in the morning, they stay through the day, and then they'd stay through the night and sit and meditate through the night. And I had a hard time sitting still for half an hour. And here were these lay people coming from their homes and sitting through the whole night. It was just astounding to me and inspiring. And I happened to be there. I was a short visit, about a month, because I had ordained, not really knowing what the heck I was doing, and I think my good karma took me to Wat Pah Pong, and but Ajahn Chah was also. I was saying, the very first thing that he said to me when I arrived, paid respects to him, saying, well, if you want to stay here, you have to stay at least 5 years. And that was just way too much for me. I was really young, and 5 years is that's almost the rest of your life when you're in your early 20s, So I just couldn't. That was just too much for me. But I stayed for a month and very inspired. But the idea of commitment was it's not. That was a bit much. And but then also during the time that I was there, it happened to be Magha Puja, which is, in those days, those were the days when the various branch monasteries of Ajahn Chah would come together. And then all the lay people from those branch monasteries would come, and it would be a day it would be a full moon, and there'd be a circumambulation at night, and there'd be Dhamma talks through the night. So that was, it was a large hall. Wat Pah Pong, Ajahn Chah's monastery, had a large Dhamma hall, but it was completely full. It was probably, I would say maybe altogether, maybe a couple hundred monks, and then who knows how many lay people, but it was overflowed the hall and out into the area around, and this circumambulation in moonlight and candlelit procession. It's quite magical. So, but just that relationship, or the opportunity for relationship of the of the lay community, providing a place where, say, anybody who is interested in Dhamma can come and practice, come and study the Buddha's teachings, come and participate in the life. But it was within the container of a solid monastic routine. So that was the sort of thing that both Ajahn Amaro and I wanted to bring to America again, is that sense of, okay, there's meditation centers, and there's meditation groups, and there's various places of spiritual practice, but that particular flavor, both of us wanted to try to bring that here with the kind of the monastic forms, because that's a very traditional form. How to bring that traditional form of Buddha Dhamma Sangha as refuge and commitment to Sila, Samadhi, Panya. I mean, it sounds trite and not that consequential, but it really is a powerful container for inner transformation and being able to live a life of spiritual practice, whether as a monastic or as a layperson, in as focused and pure a way as possible, without getting too kind of tangled up and idealistic about being absolutely pure, which is something that is, I mean, that's easily kind of drifts into that as well, trying to be kind of prissy pure about how one lives a life, and it's sort of like, no, that's and that's exactly in terms of the examples that we saw of our teachers, of Ajahn Chah and his senior disciples. These are real human beings living real human lives, and human lives can be a bit messy, but still having the training and the refuges to create that anchor. So to give that opportunity to people within, say, this society, to come and experience and see. And we were definitely kind of not committed to spreading the Dhamma. The intention was to come and practice the Dhamma, and figuring that, and Ajahn Chah used to say, you don't have to worry about kind of like spreading the Dhamma, being missionary monks in the West. He said it's like if you're a good cook and you make good soup, people will come. It's that's the reality, and so that I felt that we wanted to focus as best we could on the monastic form being upheld in the training that we received, being kind of adhered to, particularly in its spirit, if not completely in the letter, because there's certain elements that are just because of climate and it is different, but figuring out ways to make it work. Easy example. It didn't take very long being here to realize that summer in California is not the rainy season, which is that's the time in Thailand when it's the time for the Vasa or the Pansa, and that's the time for 3 months and in the Vinaya of 3 months of not traveling and focusing on the community and to realize that yes, it is the rainy season in Thailand. Yes, it is the time when they all spend the vasa together. But there's no rain, and it's dry and it's hot, but the winter, okay, it's raining. Its travel is not so wonderful. It's much more a time of hunkering down, and also like in terms of the dry season, if you're going to build anything, you have to build it during that season, so that I realize, okay, there's always going to be work projects going on in the summertime. We can take a break. So we ended up making a bit of a hybrid, so that we certainly keep the pansa, or the vasa period, according to Vinaya, not traveling, fulfilling those rules, but we would need to be doing just the basics of looking after the monastery and work projects that need to get accomplished, doing buildings. Has to be done in the summertime. So what we would do is then take that summer period, and we would have a period of group retreat, short period, but then give the opportunity individually to monks to have a period of retreat for at least a couple weeks. And then everybody got a turn, so we had a bit of stepping back. But then when it come to the winter, January, February, March, start the new year. It's January, February, March, winter time, rainy season, cold and cloudy. Everything stops, and we go into kind of the whole community on retreat. And so to me, it's turned out kind of, we get a bonus. We get the 3 months of the winter retreat, and then we do have the summertime. It's a time to sort of, okay, slow down a bit, okay, take a break, step back, and then that's also a time when we do the Vinaya instruction during the summertime for all the monastic rules of training, going over them very thoroughly, so that the community, from the monks, novices, anagarikas, all have a good foundation in all the rules of discipline. And then the winter time is completely focused on the meditation practice. Whereas, say, like in Thailand, it would tend to be both the pansa, or the vasa period, would be a time both for, say, being retreat, meditation, but also Vinaya instruction would tend to take place at the same time. So we're able to split it up, and I think it works really well. I think it's really, really beneficial. So being able to develop the monastic form in a form that is suitable for the West, for the country here, and we do live quite a ways away from. I mean, it's 16 miles into town. So to consider going alms round every single day like we would in Thailand, quite difficult. But once a week It's been from the early days of Abhayagiri, once we got our change of use permit and we're sort of legally able to establish a monastery, then we started going alms round in the area in Ukiah, in Redwood Valley, along Tomkai Road, and have kept that up, except for this hiatus during the pandemic and having to set it aside. and that and we heard, like during the pandemic, we heard from many of the townspeople in Ukiah saying, "Oh, we miss seeing the monks." Yeah, so it's quite. You see, and sometimes you don't realize, because it's ordinary. It's part of our life, and you never quite know the the impact that you make on ordinary people. But that has been the case. We've been there's a sense of connection with the local people, and then people come from all over to study and practice for shorter or longer periods of time. We've got the facilities to be able to accept people, and we try to keep it so that it's not too many people all at once, so that there's a good experience for everybody. But then also in terms of the actual training for the monastics, and we put quite a lot of emphasis on, and of course the emphasis on formal practice, on meditation, but also on learning how to live in community, because it's certainly Ajahn Chah had he put a very strong emphasis on the importance of Sangha, on the importance of community, because as human beings, the things that most irritate, upset, intimidate us is other people, and just learning how to live together. That's not. Oh, it's a nice ideal. Oh, live harmoniously, have loving kindness and compassion for everybody, and you could do that alone at your kuti for extended periods of time. But then when you have to actually work with somebody who's just completely irritating, that all falls apart real quick. So that's part of practice, part of training, part of learning how to adapt and adjust to different people, different temperaments, but then also learning how to communicate in a way that is skillful. And that's been a part of the developing of the community here is putting the emphasis on, both those elements of, the formal practice, the study, learning the teachings, getting a good foundation in the teachings, getting a good foundation in the practice, but then also integrating it with our daily life, integrating it with our interactions with each other, integrated with taking responsibility for the community. Yes, that's remember Ajahn Chah telling the story of one monk who came, he ordained from somewhere else. He's quite young, came to, he'd heard about Ajahn Chah, came to Wat Pah Pong to visit and pay respects, and was sort of gushing to Ajahn Chah. Oh, this is so wonderful. This place is so, it's just so peaceful and neat and tidy, and everything's so clean and well looked after. Isn't that wonderful? How does that happen? And Ajahn Chah, oh, it just happens by itself. It's just magical. I said, no, you have to do it. On a daily basis, you have to look after things. On a daily basis, you have to live with each other. On a daily basis, you have to take responsibility and be engaged to a certain degree, and certainly, oftentimes, like people come here and say, of course, all the buildings need to be looked after, and that was also one of the things we realized pretty quickly, that we did not have the skills to build anything. We shouldn't be given the responsibility to build anything, but we can at least look after them, and because also it actually has to pass building codes, and it is a lot of work to do that, so that we've committed to hiring contractors to do that work. But it all has to be maintained and has to be looked after. And then all of the trails, people say, oh, isn't it wonderful how there's all these trails through the forest? I say, well, every single trail, every single step through the forest, we had to carry out the wood that makes those steps. We had to carry all the tools to clear that. We had to do all of that. They didn't magically appear, and they weren't. It wasn't part of being here. So a lot of work has gone into creating it and maintaining it, and that's. That also forms a part of the training. It's not sort of, well, when I get the work done, then I'll meditate, or then I'll practice. That's oftentimes the perception. It's like they're two different things. But certainly and Ajahn Yaniko was talking about it yesterday. That sense of say at Wat Pah Pong, Ajahn Chah's monastery, and other monasteries, there would be work, and sometimes they really throw themselves into the work, but also it's always being held, or needs to be held, in terms of practicing, and so that how do I be mindful? How do I be careful and attentive? How do I be frugal with the things the materials and the tools that we're using? All of that is part of a consideration, part of the training, part of practice, and it isn't, and the work. Literally, for all of us as human beings, the work never ends. There's always something to do, and it is recognized. It's not when I get the work finally finished, when the monastery, like oftentimes people ask, oh, is the monastery finished yet? Is the monastery built yet? As if, maybe when it's built I'll come, well, it's it's never finished. There is no such thing as a finished monastery. Ajahn Sumedho and Ajahn Amaro and another monk, one time they went to Egypt and going to various places, and one of the monks who went along was actually, he's incredibly knowledgeable of Egyptian history and hieroglyphics and language, and so he was but one of the places they went to was, I think it's St. Catherine's Monastery. It's in the Sinai, and it's the oldest Christian monastery in existence, so it's almost 2,000 years old. And it's been continuously occupied, inhabited. I mean, sometimes, according to history, sometimes it's gone up, sometimes it's gone down. There's been, they've had their share of difficulties. Historically, but it's a monastery, a Christian monastery that has been a place of monastic practice for almost 2 millennia. And so anyway, they went to visit, and they'd sent word ahead of time to the monastery that there were these senior Buddhist monks who were going to be coming to visit. The lay people who were invited the monks. They sent word, and so a monk came out to receive them, and then started to take the group around to show them different places, and then they got to a particular area of the monastery, and he started apologizing and saying, "Well, I'm really sorry. This area of the monastery is it's under construction and it's not finished yet." And of course, all of our monks just started, and was apologizing. They just burst out laughing and sort of said, "We know monasteries are never finished." So yeah, 2,000 years and it's not done yet. So, so we'll see how long Abhayagiri will be around. But and that's and it depends on the people. If those seeds of communal harmony, of respect, and to the triple gem, commitment to the practice and training, Abhayagiri will be here for a long time. And because it's those same kind of seeds that allow the monastery to function quite smoothly in the present moment, and say 25 years, for it to put down roots, and those are the seeds that have allowed it to exist this far and into the future. Those are the virtues and qualities that will need to be upheld by the monastics and the lay community. And again, the sense of the communities relying on each other. That's always been the case in the traditional form of Theravada practice, and the that sense of the people coming to the monastery, even say like even during this period of time. I mean, it's quite ordinary, but it's just even these 9 days of Dhamma. Yeah, there's days when we had children coming and plugging in. Little Leo was here, and then Natalia was here, and it's great for them to be able to be exposed to a monastery from the time they're really little and feel, oh, this is a home. And it's like, Leo was here a couple of weeks ago, I think, for his birthday. His parents brought him, and he was sort of, oh, Ajahn Pasanno wasn't here. And so he was really happy to come again during the practice period to be able to see me. So, because he's been coming since he was for the first sort of baby blessing and cutting of his hair. So it's a say Alex is here today. He's had his kids up here for baby blessings. Left them at home today, so you'd have a quiet day. But still, it's that sense of the monastery is not just kind of the monastics, or it's not just a select few lay people. It's here for anybody who sees the value in it and wants to develop those qualities within their own life of refuge, of integrity, of mindfulness and peacefulness, of clarity, investigation. Those are all qualities, I think, that we all value, and having a physical place to be able to do that is really helpful. It's really important. That's what a monastery is for. And then for those who want to dig in and pursue monastic training, that is to be able to provide a place, and of course that's Ajahn Amaro and I from the early years. That was the hope that people would, Americans, because neither Ajahn Amaro or I are American, and both of us have a certain healthy skepticism. Okay, what's America going to be like? We'll see. But that sense of interest and indeed enthusiasm has been there from the get-go, and so that's always been inspiring and wanting to facilitate people's interest and both to pursue practice but to pursue monastic training as well. And that's something that say has been 25 years. I mean, we've done a pretty good job of training people in the form and the commitment to continue that and uphold those standards of training that's very firm in the community, and I think it's as a value that the whole community, extended community, are interested in maintaining and supporting is very, very strong. So it's something that is quite inspiring. And so that certainly for myself, having now that I'm now that I'm a retired abbot, there's a lot of I get a lot of joy from just walking around sometimes and just seeing the place or seeing the people, or like looking at the slideshow of and there's so many things I've already forgotten. And realize, wow, there's so many things have happened in these 25 years, and all the different people who've been involved that are Abhayagiri. I mean, Abhayagiri is like Ajahn Yaniko said yesterday. Abhayagiri is not. It's not the buildings. It's the people, and so that and certainly it's the same with any religion. Religion is not the kind of the ceremonies and the rituals and the doctrines. That's the people, and so that certainly for the Buddhist religion is it's the people. It's us. It's not out there. It's sort of what kind of religious practice are we committed to? What kind of religious practice are we inspired by and want to say embody? Because that's the sense of practicing and training. Is not just trying to conform to some kind of ideas or ideals, but embodying it, living it. And because one can have all sorts of intelligent, well thought through ideas about Buddhist practice and philosophy and meditation, but you still might be completely scattered and messed up. It has to be embodied. I remember Ajahn Chah one time making the comment, because say for us as Westerners going to live in tropical climate, a forest with where you'd walk along. You go walk through the forest, and there'd be roots, and there'd be rocks here and there, and there'd be roots, and people were always stubbing their toes or banging their feet up. There are always cuts, and of course in a tropical climate, if you don't pay attention to it, if you're not looking after it really quickly, it starts to get infected really quickly, and so they're always having to go to Ajahn Chah to get medicines for these various things. And remember somebody was talking to Ajahn Chah and talking about all the Westerners that were living with him and how they were educated and had given up their comfortable lives in the West to come and live in northeast of Thailand in this forest, and Ajahn Chah said, those Westerners, they're really clever and intelligent. Their feet are sure stupid though. That is great for ideas, but actually just the practicality of living in your body was something a bit missing. So that, again, in our monastic training and our living of the practice, it's a commitment of our whole being. And whether it's for monastics or for the lay community, learning how to give oneself completely to the to the training, recognizing that it's training of body, speech, and mind. It's a whole training, because that's what creates. Say it's our actions by body, speech, and mind that create our happiness and well-being or our suffering. So that learning how to, and you know, it's fairly simple and straightforward, but really committing to that. Oh, I really need to train body, speech, and mind. Really, how do I embody that so that it's not just a nice idea or something that I do from time to time, but this is how I live it. And so that living the teachings, living the practice, and certainly as a monastery, then hopefully the community is setting that example and learning how to do it, and then setting that example so the lay community can take that back to their lives and enrich their lives and enrich the lives of the people around them. So that's say from from a Buddhist perspective, the Buddha wasn't committed to kind of spreading the teachings everywhere, but he was committed to giving the opportunity for people to practice and to train and to taste the flavor of happiness and well-being, knowing that that's really what we all want. It's what we all crave, really. And if there's people who set that example, there's going to be other people who will pick that up and train. So that 25 years of Abhayagiri, sort of, it's a beginning, and hopefully it will continue to create benefit for many, many people. So offer that for reflection. Sadhu, 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 adumodam.
2 o'clock on the dot. Remember Ajahn Pasanno saying one time that when they had tape cassettes, I don't know how many people know what those are or remember what those are, but when they had tape cassettes at Wapananachat, and he made a adhitthana determination to talk exactly 60 minutes, to not waste any of the tape. And he would talk exactly 60 minutes every talk. And then after about a year and a half, he found out they were all 90-minute tapes. There was 30 minutes of blank on every single one. So he hadn't fulfilled his adhitthana to not waste any tape.